Snipes and Insights. It's the special Monday Memorial Day episode. You guys maybe thought we weren't going to be tapped in, but we're locked and loaded on this Monday Memorial Day. I'm your host, Keith Kavanaugh, alongside Tyler Madarasz. And Tyler, what a weekend of hockey we got, huh?
Yeah, it was awesome. Unless you're a Carolina Hurricanes fan, obviously the Stars and Oilers series is living up to expectations. But Keith, we'll break it down in a second. Game 4 tonight, but the Carolina Hurricanes just disappointing everyone out there.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised at how that series has played out a little bit. I think people expected Florida to have like a slight edge, I would say, but in terms of just this absolute beatdown that we've seen coming, I don't think anyone expected that, especially when you saw how Carolina played in those first two rounds. They looked like a team that maybe turned the corner a little bit and you thought had a really good chance to make the Stanley Cup Final, but it's not looking that way. But we'll get to that one in a little bit. Let's start with this Dallas-Edmonton series. We had a game yesterday, 3 p.m., which I loved. I loved a nice little afternoon game, especially with the NBA going to 8 p.m. I thought it was a good division there. And the Edmonton Oilers won that game by a lot of goals, 6-1. Connor McDavid, finally, we have been talking about him. He was overdue for a goal. All his underlying numbers were there. He gets 2 on the score sheet. Seth, let's roll this goal right here. This is a 3-on-1. The defenseman had absolutely no chance when you have McDavid coming down. I think who else is that? Is that Nugent Hopkins and Hyman? I don't even know. But those 3 guys, you don't want any part of that. There's no chance for the defenseman. Is that CC? Yeah, just a tough one for them. But I think that Edmonton has just played really, really well in this series. And if we're looking at what their keys are, off the rush, they've been absolutely ridiculous in this series. Scoring chance advantage 20-9, goals 5-1. What were your thoughts on this game yesterday?
Yeah, you know what? It was an absolute beatdown. In the second period, Stuart Skinner was unbelievable. I think the Dallas Stars had 21 shots. One of them got by Skinner. Also, Jason Robertson said after the game he had no idea that the goal was even his. So if that doesn't hit his stick, it's probably another shutout for Stuart Skinner. But his numbers in his last 4 wins in the Stanley Cup playoffs just speak for themselves. His GAA is ridiculous. It's under 0.30. His save percentage is 991 in these last 4 victories. So we've talked about him a lot. Obviously a polarizing player for Oilers fans, but right now he's looking like that stud that can bring them to the Cup Final. And it was just a fun game all around if you're an Oilers fan. If you're there, it's an afternoon start. Would have been a 1 p.m. local start, 3 o'clock for us here on the East Coast. But as you said, love the afternoon start. But McDavid was great. Zach Hyman, great once again. We'll talk about him a little more in a second. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 3 assists. I think they were all primary. Evander Kane, a bunch of points as well. So that was a positive for Chris Knoblauch and the Oilers. And they just dominated. The goal we saw there, it was McDavid just chipped it by Harley like it was nothing and left him in the dust. And then all of a sudden, as you said, CC had no chance on the 3-on-1. McDavid scores another goal later. Hyman had that nice breakaway goal. And even John Klingberg scored. We'll talk about John Klingberg maybe at the end, but even John Klingberg scored against his former team. Got to love that revenge.
Yeah, Connor McDavid has a special skill set where he can make even the top-end defensemen in this league look absolutely pedestrian, like they're on a Tuesday night, 11 p.m. beer league game. He does something special. But yeah, 2 goals for him yesterday. I thought it was good that he got back on the score sheet. A lot of good stuff, around his game. Also, to me, too, like you mentioned, Stuart Skinner, it was his first game in the playoffs where he had a save percentage in the 900 range because basically every game he has played has either been 840 or worse or 1,000 shutout. So first game for Stuart Skinner where he had, in that 900 range. But like Tyler mentioned there, monster second period, a lot of good saves. Dallas did end up having some pretty good chances, but at the end of the day, it was all Oilers on the scoreboard. A couple things on the Dallas side of things that's surprising, like Mikko Rantanen. I know we've been talking about him nonstop this playoffs. Super slow start in the Colorado series, then exploded towards the end of that series and into the Winnipeg series. But then in his last 6 playoff games, he's only had 3 assists, no goals. In this series, he just has 2 assists in 3 games. So he's a guy where you thought that he was kind of turned the corner and he was really kind of getting it going. And now he hasn't scored in a bunch of games. He's only getting a couple assists here and there. So he's a guy Dallas needs to get going. And then Wyatt Johnston, too. I know we talked about Jason Robertson a lot, and he finally got on the score sheet, even if he didn't necessarily mean to. But Wyatt Johnston is a guy who he tore it up last playoffs. He was a guy who you thought was going to continue that momentum. He had a pretty decent regular season here, but in the playoffs so far, he only has 8 points in 16 games. And he's actually right now statistically the worst plus minus in playoff history right now. He's at -17. The record is -16 from some guy in the 80s. So if Wyatt Johnston doesn't get on the positive end of that, he could end up in some history he doesn't want to be a part of.
Yeah, you always wonder if a player like that is dealing with something injury-wise because Wyatt Johnston's already become one of those great two-way centers. So maybe he's dealing with something, but hope he doesn't get the record. That just is a record you don't want to have in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But as you say, some guys just got to step up, whether it's Mikko Rantanen, who hasn't been able to score. Maybe the Moose gets loose in Game 4 in Edmonton. Like, we'll have to wait and see tomorrow night, but wouldn't shock me if Mikko Rantanen exploded. And obviously, Roope Hintz is not playing right now because of that Darnell Nurse slash. So takes away from that top line with Mikael Granlund. But like whether it's him stepping up, whether it's Johnston, that would be a great thing tomorrow. Whether it's one of the top guys, Matt Duchene has one goal. I know it's a game winner, but someone has to step up for the Stars. They don't want to go down 3-1 to McDavid and the Oilers. That would almost be the nail in the coffin for the Stars team to win 3 straight in that series. So excited for that series to hopefully get tied tomorrow, but someone has to step up big time on the Stars forward group.
Yeah, I think that Hintz injury is pretty big because no offense to Mikael Granlund, but he's probably not the 1C you want leading your team in the postseason as of right now. He's a solid guy on the wing when he's on that first line, or maybe a second or third line center. I think Roope Hintz carries a lot of that with him when he plays, and that slash was unfortunate. You see a lot of those in the season. I feel like it's just more of a caught him in the wrong place. Hopefully he's back for Game 4, but who knows with that. He could be out for the rest of the series. We'll have to see how that plays out. And then like Connor McDavid too, he's been matched up the most against the Mikko Rantanen at 5-on-5 over 24 minutes. So Connor McDavid is not necessarily known as a defensive stalwart, but whatever he's been doing while he's been playing against Mikko Rantanen has clearly seemed to work. At least him, and then also Evan Bouchard and Brett Kulak are also paired up the most against Mikko Rantanen. So that combination of players has done something right this series to cool him down a bit. Another thing I love talking about in this series is Zach Hyman. His hits, right? We've been talking about his hits a little bit. He now is up to 109 hits in 14 playoff games. That is an insane amount of hits. It's almost 9 hits per game. His best in the 82-game regular season, his career high. Tyler, you want to take a guess at what it is?
Close to that, probably.
Exactly. Spot on. 117. So he's basically 8 away in the playoffs from his career high in an 82-game regular season. So that's just something that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what he's kind of turned in his head a little bit for him to become more of a physical guy, but whatever it's doing, it's working. He also got on the score sheet a couple games ago, so he's also turning those hits then into offense. So I think he's just a well-rounded player. He obviously had a tough regular season, I'd say, this year, just compared to last year when he scored over 50 goals. Like this year, the goals were not coming as easily. He was left off the Four Nations roster for Team Canada. So I think maybe he kind of, something in his head flipped a little bit. He's like, maybe I got to change my game a little bit, and it's clearly working right now.
Yeah, when you score 54 goals, I think most seasons that follow are going to be a disappointment. But yeah, it didn't really get there this year. And the hitting's just what he's kind of turned his game into come postseason time. It's what Chris Knobloch's wanted a lot of these players to do, especially a guy that's playing for the most part with Connor McDavid, just in the top 6 in general. You have to change your game just a little. So I love that Zach Hyman's been doing that. He had double digits in hits last night in 10. And do you know the gap between him and Sam Bennett? It's 31 hits for the lead in the postseason. That is a huge gap. We know Sam Bennett also has a lot of hitting. He hits a lot in the regular season, unlike Zach Hyman, but it's just been impressive what Hyman's done to kind of turn his game into being a playoff player, and Oilers fans are very appreciative of it.
And I feel like Bennett might have an extra game or two as well. So that also is just, it's insane. And like Sam Bennett's a guy known to be a hitter, right? He's known to be a physical presence, a pest. Like Zach Hyman is not really known for that. He's known to get to the greasy areas and score a lot of goals right in the front of the net, but not necessarily put on his physicalness. So it's good to see that. It's good to see the Oilers rolling. They are up 2-1 in this series. It feels like they have a bigger lead. We'll see what happens in Game 4. If Dallas is able to even it up, then we got a series. But if Edmonton goes up 3-1 at home, heading back to Dallas, I think that series might as well be over, in addition to this series that we're about to talk about in a second.
Yeah, without a doubt. The Stars desperately need a win. It's tough in Edmonton, and you got Kane rolling in the Rolls Royce and everything. But as we said, one of the big players has to step up. It better be Mikko Rantanen tomorrow.
Whether it's a must win or a can't lose, Dallas is going to need to try to even that series at 2. We'll be seeing that one tomorrow night for us. Let's go to the net game tonight, though. We have the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Game 4. The Florida Panthers are up 3-0 in this series. Seth, if we get the lines and lineup combos up, Florida is a minus 172 on the money line tonight to finish the job at home, with Carolina plus 145. The over-under is set at 5.5 with our friends over at CoolBet. If you want to get in on the action, go to puckpedia.com/CoolBet. Stay cool and bet responsibly. If you want to take a look at the lines too, also on PuckPedia's website, the Carolina Hurricanes, I think, make sense, right? They had to kind of put their lines in a blender. Let's see if we can get something going. So they bumped Taylor Hall up to that first line with Aho and Jarvis. Svechnikov is now on line 2 with Kotkaniemi and Blake. Stankoven moves down to the third line with Stahl and Martinuk, and then Will Carrier drops to the fourth line with Jankowski and Eric Robertson, as Jack Roslovic is scratched again. If we want to take a look at the D pairs, they remain the same as last game, Slavin Burns, and then you got Nikishin and Morrow on the right side with the injuries to Sean Walker and Jalen Chatfield. And then in goal, it's going to be Freddie Anderson tonight instead of Kochetkov. Anderson was benched in game 3. Kochetkov led in a bunch of goals, and they're deciding to now go back to Freddie Anderson in game 4, which makes sense. I kind of understood the change at the time too, so I wasn't too, mad about that, but I think it's the right move to go back to Freddie tonight. If you want to take a look at the Florida side of things, Florida also dealing with some injuries. There will be no Sam Reinhart tonight, who also missed last game. But then in addition, no Nico Mikkola on the back end or AJ Greer on the fourth line. Sturm and Balinskis are going to draw in for those two. We're going to have Bob in net, and the lines for the most of that stay the same there. What are your thoughts on this series? Do you think Carolina has any chance in hell of extending it tonight?
Unfortunately, Keith, this series is null and void. This series is done. The Florida Panthers are winning tonight. They're going to put the Carolina Hurricanes out of their misery, and sadly, they're going to extend their conference finals losing streak to 16 straight games, which seems unfathomable, but that's going to be the case tonight. There's no chance Carolina wins. Plus 145 for a reason. Like the Florida Panthers on home ice with the crazy fans there. There's going to be like 400 rats on the ice at the end of the game. And like all you can do if you're Rod Brind'Amour is try to make some changes. You said it with Kochetkov last game. Unfortunately for him, what did he allow? 6 goals in that game. So you have to go back to Freddie Anderson. In this one, it sucks that Chatfield's injured. Same thing with Sean Walker. But man, like what else can you do? You got to insert a couple rookies in. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, though, on the second line with your guy Svechnikov and a rookie Jackson Blake, I do not like that at all. Like Kotkaniemi is a guy that can easily be a healthy scratch, so I don't see how that line's going to work. Maybe it doesn't last that long, but if you're Rod Brind'Amour, you just got to try some things, and that's what they're doing tonight. And then the injuries on the Florida side of thing, to me, they don't play into it much. Even though Nico Mikkola has been outstanding, he's been one of the best Florida Panthers by far. It's not really going to be that detrimental to Paul Maurice's blue line. Like Uvis Balinskis has proven that he could be an NHL defenseman. He'll come in, play some solid minutes, 10 to 13 minutes maybe tonight. And then Nico Sturm, unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to get back in because that fourth line's been playing so well. So he'll get back in for AJ Greer. He brings a great pedigree. He's won a Stanley Cup like a lot of these Florida Panthers have already. So I like Nico Sturm coming in. And this Florida Panthers team, like, I don't know what's going to be dominant where they've scored. I think they scored 5, 5, and 6 in this. Maybe they don't score 5 or 6, but they're winning tonight and they're getting to the Stanley Cup final.
They're single-handedly carrying these cool bet over-under bets. So good for the Florida Panthers. If you've been taking the over, you want to thank your friends over at Florida and thank our friends at CoolBet for that. But to your point, too, I think Florida's kind of they've just been absolutely dominant, especially if you look at 5-on-5, for example. If you want to look at the goal differential, it's 12-1 at 5-on-5 in this series. But the expected goals is actually really, really close margin. It's about 5.9 to 4.9. So only a goal differential unexpected. So Florida is just taking advantage of all their opportunities, and Carolina is doing the opposite. They're not taking advantage of those opportunities. You want to talk about a guy, too, our guy Nico Mikkola, for example. We've talked about him on previous shows. You just mentioned that, Balinskis can come in and play solid minutes, but Mikkola scored 2 goals last game, too, which is really kind of not part of his game. So the fact that he's been able to dominate defensively, like we mentioned, and then have great outlet passes, but then he actually put a couple in the back of the net last game, he's a guy who's trending in the absolute right direction for the Florida Panthers right now. Carolina just doesn't, I don't think they have it. Like, I'm so confused too, because watching their first two series, like they made New Jersey and Washington like completely inferior opponents. And then you look at the Florida on the flip side, like yes, they did great work with against Tampa, but then the Toronto series was a good back and forth. Both those teams, game 7, aside from the blowout, right? Like you're going into that game, it could have went either way. So I think Florida has just kind of turned it up a notch as they do in the playoffs. This team knows how to win. Paul Maurice is just a really, really good head coach. I think he knows how to push the right buttons. He knows exactly what is needed out of his team to win these games. And a lot of guys, when Paul Maurice was initially hired in Florida, people were like, "Do you really want to make that move?" Andrew Brunette was coming off of winning the President's Trophy, and I know he stepped in for Quenneville that year, but at the same time, like that was a little bit of a controversial hiring. Like Maurice had just like stepped down from the Jets, and no one really knew like where his headspace was at. But he's come in there and he's done exactly what's needed of him.
Yeah, Paul Maurice is just such a fun head coach to hear, listen to post game, and obviously a Stanley Cup champion now. Just watching the cup get handed to him last year gave us chills. Even just thinking about it almost gets you emotional as a hockey fan. So maybe he gets another one, third straight cup final on the brink for this Florida Panthers team. We don't want to jinx anything, but I think we both agree, and people out there watching can agree, this Florida Panthers team just looks unstoppable right now. So we'll see if a Western Conference opponent can do that. They've been great through these rounds. We'll see if they can finish off this sweep, which no one thought was possible. And let's also give some credit to Bill Zito, because at one point he brings Nico Mikkola in. This year, he brings Seth Jones in. Like, what an addition Jones was as well. Like, he's built this blue line so well. He's built the forward group great. Probably on tap to win his first GM of the Year award. So fingers crossed for Bill Zito, because he deserves it. But this team from the top down has just been built so well. And the Carolina Hurricanes are seeing that firsthand. And as you said, like the Maple Leafs were there. They got to 7 games, but they squandered that opportunity and just played a horrendous hockey game in game 7. The Panthers showed them pretty much who was boss and how you become a Stanley Cup champion. So they're maybe on their way to back-to-back cups this year. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, you mentioned the Seth Jones trade and also the Brad Marchand trade, right? That was a trade that a lot of people were like, that's all it took to get Brad Marchand over to Florida. Like, I think it was a second-round pick. A lot of people thought he'd go for a first, maybe a first plus, and he really only went for a second-round pick. And then he's fit so seamlessly on that third line with Lundell and Luosterainen. So he's a guy, and I know Luosterainen got kicked out of the last game like pretty early on, so they had to make do with 11 forwards. But that when that third line's humming, and then you can kind of match up the Barkov line and then the Bennett line with whoever you want, like that opens up a lot of doors for this Florida Panthers team. And then let's get that to Chuck video going too. And he was just chasing Aho around last game. Like, this is a video where I watch and I'm just like, what the hell are the Carolina Hurricanes doing? You're letting Matthew Tkachuk just run around, just bully your guy the entire shift here. Then he's going to end up, taking him down in a chokehold and just throwing him to the ground. No one steps in there. Jarvis is just standing around like nothing happening. Brent Burns eventually comes in, but like doesn't do much. Like, that is the moment where I knew that this series was over. And then Matthew Tkachuk's like, I'm in your head. I remember what you did to my guy Reinhart. I remember. So to me, that's just a moment where I'm like, Carolina, you guys are like this, system team, this gritty, deep, like chip it in, forecheck, win with speed, like pressure and physical, and they just did none of that.
Yeah, Rod Brennamore probably wasn't too happy that no one on the ice stepped up. Like, Brent Burns came in, but didn't do much. He's not the guy to come in and just like sucker punch a guy. But Seth Jarvis is standing right there. Slavin was on the ice. Someone could have came in and maybe just started punching Matthew Tkachuk while he's on top of Sebastian Aho. I would have loved to see that. I'm sure a lot of Carolina Hurricanes share the same feelings. But yeah, as you said, when that kind of thing happens, the game's already out of reach. If you're Carolina, you're losing, and this is happening to your star player, there has to be a response. So I don't know if it happens in this game. They're probably going to be losing maybe by that scoreline in this game at some point anyway. So maybe nothing else will happen, but wasn't happy to see no one step in for Aho either.
No, and then Brindamore, I feel like almost threw a little shot at Tulsky at one point where he said, at this point of the year, you kind of need more depth on defense, alluding to the 2 injuries. But at the same time, like, you're not expecting Chatfield and Walker to both go down. And then you have to like slip in these rookies, Nikisha and Morrow, who both look like really promising players in the NHL, but maybe not guys you want to be relying on in a conference final at this point in time, especially on the right side. Now you got Burns, Nikisha, and Morrow down your right side. And like, Brent Burns obviously had a great career, but at 39 years old, he's not what he was 5-10 years ago. So it's tough when that's the right side of your defense at the given moment. And to me, it seems like Brindamore kind of was hoping to have a little more depth or just a different guy, maybe that he could slid in there if one of those guys got hurt. But at the end of the day, that's what kind of Carolina assembled their team, and that's how they assemble it. They find value in guys. They get rid of guys. They're like the Patriots in the NFL, where they won't extend them, before they're due. So to me, I think it is what it is at this point, and we'll see what happens in tonight's game.
Yeah, Tom Dundon is an interesting owner. That is for sure. Interesting is probably the right word there. But hey, what else can you do? Like, injuries happen in the postseason. Most head coaches want as much depth as possible. It's always not possible for the general managers to get it. Like, I think other than these rookies, what do they have? Like Riley Stillman there. I don't think you're going to insert him into a playoff.
Smith too.
Ty Smith, yeah, who's been a pretty polarizing D-man even when he was in New Jersey. So, yeah, the depth isn't there, and the Carolina Hurricanes just need the series to be over and reevaluate things in the offseason.
Yeah, the good news for the Hurricanes, right? They have one of the best prospect pools. They have $28 million in cap space. If you go to PuckPedia, you can look at what their roster is going to be next year. They have a lot of their core guys signed, and then some younger guys on entry-level deals coming up that are going to be big parts of their team moving forward. So the Hurricanes are well positioned to kind of, take a step back, look at reevaluate, and then they're basically going to be in on every big free agent that they want to be. So we'll see what happens if they're able to convince the free agent to come over, or if it's going to have to be through the trade route. But either way, it looks like this series is probably going to be over. Whether that's tonight, we'll see. That's why they play the game. So we'll see that tonight, 8 p.m. Florida Carolina game 4. Carolina is able to extend it. We'll have a game 5 in a couple nights, and if maybe we'll see what happens. But I'm not thinking all that much is going to happen. But you never know. That is why they play the games. Let's wrap up the episode here with our Puck Doku board. Seth, if you want to get those up on the screen here. So I will say the good news for us, and I say us is all three of us, me, Tyler, and Seth. All of our uniqueness scores today were under 10. So our cumulative squares of 9 had basically no one had picked more than 9%. So that is promising to see. If we want to see who got last place again, it was me, obviously. But on the flip side, Tyler, for the first time in our Puck Doku journey, Tyler has beat our producer Seth, surprisingly. Tyler with a uniqueness of 2. Tyler, what made you so dominant on this board today?
Yeah, I kind of just like the teams. The 50-plus goals scored in a career, you could just go anywhere for some legendary players. I almost regret not putting Chad LaRose in there for the Carolina Hurricanes because I was a big Chad LaRose guy. But Bates Battaglia, what a legend he was. So, yeah, on my board, had to get a guy who scored in the previous game. We just talked about him, John Klingberg. So, John Klingberg, stud in Dallas, has over 50 goals. The 2 guys without pictures, Brian Muir, legend. I played with him at like a charity tournament once. Such a nice guy. He wore 47 at one point in his career. Same with Aaron Downey. You see my Twitter handle at Tyler Madarasz 47. So I appreciate that. And Aaron Downey, do we want to roll that right now before we get into some of these? Like, this is why I put Aaron Downey. His legendary fight with Jesse Bowler. He's just the left hand, just absolutely clocked him. One of my favorite fights of all time. Got to give a big shout out to Shelburne, Ontario's own, the potato farmer, Aaron Downey. Played with a bunch of teams, but Dallas and Chicago being a couple of them, so had to use him there. He used to be one of my favorites. He actually won a Stanley Cup in Detroit in one of those times where the Red Wings never really had an enforcer. All of a sudden, they brought Aaron Downey in, and he won a cup there, so I thought that was really cool. And then I'll go to your boards, Keith, because I liked a couple of your players. Cody Eakin, who we both had in the same square. Matt Hendricks. I think he had the paralyzer move in the shootout. I think that's what they called it. Matt Hendricks had such an unbelievable move. Bruce Boudreau used to love it in Washington, so I loved your Matt Hendricks pick. And then over to Seth's board, both of you guys, again, Adam Clendenning must be a Puck Doku legend. He's played with 7 NHL teams, and both of you guys had him. I love the James Wisniewski pick. And David Desharnais, I almost forgot he was an Oiler, but I think that was my favorite pick out of all of our boards today.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that he was on the Oilers, right? It was only probably a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. But such a hat, you know?
I know, yeah. No, yeah, for my board too, like Darian Hatcher, just an absolute all-time defenseman on the Dallas Stars. I was hoping he had more than 50 goals. I wasn't 100% sure when I submitted that. I think I looked after the fact, and he was around 78, 79. So what a guy there. And then Oleg Tverdovsky, too, won a cup with New Jersey in 2003. played one season for the Hurricanes later on in his career. I think it was like 09, 010. So he's a guy who early on in his career was kind of more of an offensive inclined defenseman. So I figured he would have the 50 goal mark. And then Teddy Purcell, just an absolute freaking beauty this guy is. I've listened to some of his interviews on Chicklets and other media outlets after his career. He seems like a total players guy, a guy you want to go out to with in the bar, have a couple beers with, and just talk about life, hockey, and anything really. He seems like a fun dude to be around. But yeah, good boards here. Seth, good board again. Sorry you only got 6. If you want to pull up the leaderboard, I don't know if you updated it or not. Just tough. Seth's pulling away there. Tyler though is in the mix. He's only 3 points behind Seth. I will get a point eventually. We do a 2-1-0 system here. Total uniqueness, 115 sounds like a lot, but I promise you it's not. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better every day. These guys are just real hockey nerds, and that's all there is to it. If you see them walking around the streets, and just know that they're nerds, and I'm not as big of a nerd. So I think that's the main takeaway I have here.
I think all three of us are pretty solid hockey nerds. Like a 115 uniqueness you can easily get on one board. So to have that as your total is good. 64 is good. Seth's going to run away with things at some point, as you know. So it's been fun doing this. We unfortunately might get some days where we don't do a show because of the Carolina Hurricane. So thanks, Carolina. But this has been fun doing it. And it'll be fun to watch Seth hold that championship up at the end of things.
100%. We'll see how that all plays out. But that's all we got for today's show. We got one game tonight. It's game 4. Panthers, Hurricanes. Are the Hurricanes going to extend this series, or the Panthers going to a 3rd straight Cup final? It's Keith. It's Tyler. Thanks to our friends at CoolBet. Go to puckpedia.com/CoolBet to get in on the action tonight. That's all the time we have for you, folks. Have a good one.